Hello and welcome to Conscious TV and to the 5th program on the series of important books. And today my guest is Martine Batchelor. Welcome, Martine.
Hello.
And we'll be exploring 4 books that she has selected that have been particularly important in her life. Now, Martine is a Buddhist meditation teacher as well as being a writer, and she has written 8 books, and she also teaches retreats in the UK and abroad. And Martine was a nun in Korea, which I find really fascinating. Anyway, there will be an interview with Renate following this one, and where that will be probably discussed, I'm sure. Anyway, here are the 4 books. The first one is Cold Mountain, and it's a selection of poems written by Han-shan, who is a poet that lived in the Tang dynasty. So here is Cold Mountain. Then we have Being Bodies by Lenore, Friedman and Susan Moon. And again, it's another compilation of writings by Buddhist women. Joyful Life in the Heart of Pain by Darlene Cohen, another very interesting book dealing with pain. And the last one is The Day the Voices Stopped by Steele, and we'll be looking at the effect of schizophrenia and what it means to live with schizophrenia. Again, an amazing book. Martine, so let's start with Cold Mountain. What can you tell us about this book and how it has affected you?
This book, Cold Mountain, is actually the name. Han-shan means cold mountain.
Right.
So that's the name of the poet.
Right.
And he's a little mythical. We think he existed, but
yeah.
Who knows? It's kind of lots of legend about the cold mountain poets. And he's kind of like, he's associated with another person, Chite, and there is a story that they disappear into the clouds. So there is, but it's kind of like, often you see it in the painting and things like that. What I like about Cold Mountain is that it's a poetic sensitivity. So when I read that book, it really resonated, because I have this kind of feeling for Asia, for the Chinese culture and the Asian culture. And also what is interesting in Han-shan is spiritual at the same time as being funny.
Right.
And also he doesn't really take himself too seriously. And he also questions a lot the kind of how people take themselves seriously.
Right.
And so that's why I kind of like that book.
And where were you in your life when you came across this? Where were you?
Well, I was a nun in Korea, and we had a little library that my friends had collected together there. The few Westerners were living there. And so I found it, and even before that, I kind of liked the other Chinese poets, like Li Po, Tu Fu, and Han-shan. I really like, again, that humor in there.
Right, right. So it was the humor that really attracted you to this particular kind of poem?
That and the sensitivity, the kind of like, I love haikus, I love Chinese poetry, because it's often referring to nature.
Right.
And to nature in also a very, what I call, meditative way.
Okay.
So that's what I like. It's kind of meditative and has some other things to it.
Yeah, humor to it. Do you have any favorite? I mean, it's a silly question to ask, but
what my very favorite is this one. This is a very short one.
okay.
Body clothed in a no-cloth robe, feet cloud in turtle's fur boots. I seize my bow of rabbit horn, and prepare to shoot the devil, ignorance.
Why is it your favorite?
It's my favorite because basically he's talking of impossibility.
Right.
And what is, in a way, in a very funny way here, looking at how we cling to certainty.
Yes.
And sometimes we cling to certainty who are really not real, but we really cling to them. And so he kind of saying, you know, that sometimes we take something which is not existing as existing, and then we get kind of really caught in it. And so basically he presents us with different impossibilities.
Right.
And to me it's kind of, in a way, questioning how we delude ourselves.
Right.
But in a funny way.
In a funny way, yes.
And then the other poem, which I like also very much, and which then, for me, is a poem of Cold Mountain. the poet. I climb the road to Coal Mountain, the road to Coal Mountain that never ends. The valleys are long and strewn with stones, the streams broad and banked with thick grass. Moss is slippery, though no rain has fallen. Pines sigh, but it is not the wind. Who can break from the snares of the world and sit with me among the white clouds? So to me, this is about basically an invitation to meditation, an invitation to reconnect with nature, an invitation towards simplicity.
Right, okay. How old were you when you came across this?
Maybe 23.
Right, okay, very young. Yeah, great, okay. I do have one that I actually enjoyed myself, which I'd like to read. I need to put my glasses on. I don't know why this struck me, but there's several that struck me, but I just thought, this is kind of interesting. So, Han-shan writes you these words which no one will believe. Honey is sweet, men love the taste. Medicine is bitter and hard to swallow. What soothes the feelings brings contentment. What opposes the will calls forth anger. Yet I ask you to look at a wooden puppet, worn out by the moment of play on stage. You know, partly maybe what touches me is the fact that sometimes I feel like a puppet being played on the stage that is called the world. So anyway, to move on to the next book, Being Bodies. Tell me why you chose this one and why did it make an impact on you and how?
Being Bodies is a book I read after I stopped being a nun. I was a nun in Korea for 10 years, and I came back and I lived in England in a Buddhist community. So it was leaving the monastic life to go back to the everyday life, one could say. And reading this book, Being Bodies, really for me was about that. Actually, how can you use a meditation to help you with daily life, to help you with difficulties? And so this is one of the first books, which was about Buddhism and women, and there have been a few. But the first one where I really felt it was less about theory, about meditation, and more about actual life. And so here you have all these women, and there are more who are more practical, some who are more theoretical. And I really like more, of course, the practical one. And like some people, you know, for example, having a kind of difficult illness, like Joan Sutherland. And what was amazing, she had an immune disease due to chemical reaction. And she has really a lot of difficulty. And then she comes to this acceptance that she shared with others. I could see that the truest acceptance of my circumstances was not the same as resignation to my fate. Acceptance can be dynamic. It can include the possible as well as the actual. And I think that's why, in a way, this is very much about. In the book, you have people using the meditation not to fly somewhere else to another dimension, but how can I be with my illness? How can I be with my disability? Because, for example, we've got Joan Tollefson, who you might have later on, and who has a disability. And there is this beautiful thing she said at the end. Living with disability, like all forms of upset and disappointment, is a gift if we work with it intelligently, as an opportunity to see and question our images, ideals, expectations, our basic desire to be different than we are. As these mental constructions become more transparent and begin to unravel, beauty reveals itself right here and now, where we least expected to find it.
Right.
And so I think that's what I found interesting with these people, is kind of like being with what is going on in what I call creative engagement. But the one that I would say touched me the most was China Gallant. Because the story of China Gallant shows you in a way you could say, the limit
Yes.
of meditation.
Yes.
That we have to be careful not to think of meditation as a magic.
Yes.
It's going to resolve all my problem. And here we have a practitioner, Zen practitioner, long-standing, and who at the same time is alcoholic.
She's an alcoholic, yes.
And then, in a way, she uses meditation to cope with alcoholism,
Yes.
but not to deal with it.
Yes. Yes.
And so that I thought was kind of very interesting, to kind of, in a way, to see that meditation can be helpful, but also we need to see that sometimes we need some other thing to complement its
Yes.
action. So, for example, here, the practice leader and the teacher were very kind and tried to be helpful. But it would have taken someone experienced or knowledgeable about alcoholism and addiction, and that was not part of their training. No one could see through to a problem that I would have denied anyway. I had been asked point blank. I went on blindly, rigidly, dying a little more each day in my long black robes and in my ever-present smile. But rather than dying from the ego killing meant to occur in Zen practice, I was succumbing to the living death that alcoholism and addiction bring.
Yes.
And what is interesting here is that she, suddenly what really actually brought her out as a shock is her daughter. And she tells the moment where she kind of collapsed
Yes.
in her alcoholic days. Her daughter finds her, teenager, and finally she said, "Mom, you really need to get yourself together. This has to stop."
Yes.
And that kind of is kind of the shock which makes her see, I have to kind of, not just sit it out,
Yes.
but I have to do something else.
Do you talk about this specifically when you teach meditation? Do
Well,
you bring that kind of awareness to, people have issues when they sit, and we know that those issues still remain when they sit. But so do you talk about that?
Yes, because to me this is one of the reasons I wrote one of my books, Let Go,
Right.
was because of that. I could
Right.
see that people could do lots of meditation,
Yes.
have very good meditative experiences, but they were stuck
Yes.
in their habits.
Yes.
And so you have habits from ordinary habits, but which limit your life, to really difficult habits like addiction, alcoholism. So in my book, I write about it, and then,
Right.
of course, I talk about it, because
Right.
I'm very interested in that.
Yeah.
That, in a way, how can the meditation help us to see our habits and
Right.
to creatively engage with them?
And do something about it.
Exactly.
If it's needed, like in the case of alcoholism. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. And the next book, which I thought was really actually quite remarkable as well, because we don't often talk about pain. And yet it's amazing how many people still live with chronic pain. And so tell us a little bit about this book.
So this book, that's the first time I read it. Again, because I was interested in how people deal with pain, how meditation can help them.
Yes.
So I found Darlene's book, and then actually now it changed. The title has changed. They redid the book as Turning Suffering Inside Out, if people
Right.
want to find it.
Okay.
And unfortunately now Darlene died. Darlene
has
died
she?
last year.
Oh, I had no idea. Okay.
She died last year.
Okay.
But
Did she die of her own problem or of
No,
her
no,
own
she
condition?
actually died of cancer.
Oh, right, okay.
And the thing about the book is that it really shows you, again, you have this impression nowadays with meditation, mindfulness, if you're mindful enough, if you meditate enough, then you can be above it all and nothing matters.
But it's not true.
Exactly. So in this book, the Zen teacher, age 40, gets rheumatoid arthritis.
Yes.
And what I like about the book is that she shows how, in some ways, meditation really helps her to be with the illness, but in different ways.
Yes.
Like, she's not always above it all. Sometimes she can be in the meditation state and she lie down because she can't move, and then she looks at the room in a different way, and she experiences her life in a different way,
Yes.
because she's so in the moment in
Yes,
that way,
yes.
because that's the only thing she can do.
Yes.
But she says all the time, the only thing she can do is eat ice cream, watching soap on TV, Or sometimes she used to wake up in the morning and moan, and that disturbed her son and her husband until they decided to join her as a kind of family exercise of expressing the suffering of that illness. But also she goes kayaking, she also learned how to do certain movement that she teaches to others. So again, what I like about the book is a broad approach.
Yes.
Again, very creative, and she really shows many different aspects of how to deal with pain.
Yes, it's a very practical book, actually, because it gives all kinds of different suggestions and in terms of exercises or even meditation and how to sit and all of that. And sorry, I've interrupted you.
No, because I think one of the things I like the most about was at the beginning, when she says what she really, in order to make things less painful, she had to let go of the idea that one day she could be like before she had it.
Yes.
And then once she accepted that she could not be like before, then actually she could be really creative.
Yeah. And also, she's very helpful to others in terms of the work that she did, and as well as writing this book, obviously, in terms of living with chronic pain. So she turned around a condition that was definitely debilitating to the benefit of all, including herself.
Yeah, because she, after that, also wrote a book on physically for the people with rheumatoid arthritis, and giving them exercise.
Yes.
She had a whole system of exercise which really seems to help people with that condition.
Yeah. There are a few exercises in this book as well that I've even tried myself, actually. So yeah, so that's it's a very very interesting book and useful. Well, last but not least, The Day the Voices Stopped. What a gritty, painful, beautiful book. I just couldn't stop putting it. I mean, I couldn't put it down. I read it in 2 days, but boy, does it hurt. Tell us about why you chose this particular book.
I chose this particular book for 2 reasons. One reason is that as a meditation teacher, I meet lots of people, and I feel that to help me understand people's situation and condition, I read a lot of this type of book. Not psychological book, theoretical book, but more people where people tell about their condition. Yes. How does it feel to be bipolar? How does it feel to be schizophrenic? How does it feel to be depressive? So I read lots of this book, which I found extremely helpful. But this one was with the Ken Steele. Again, it's, as you say, it's a terrifying read because it has a psychological therapeutic community in the 50s, which was still not very enlightened. So he had really terrible experience. But what is interesting is that he has this creative potential within him. So he goes up, and then he has this self-defeating mechanism. He goes down, then he goes up again, then he goes down again, goes up again. So what is interesting is that it's really sure that even if you have a really difficult illness, you still have the creative potential. I think that's shown quite a lot.
Yes.
But to me, what really was special for me was the title, actually. When he described what happened with the title, The Day the Voice Stopped. Because to me, this is actually what I could nearly say, what it could be to be awakened. And it's, to me, like representing a moment of awakening. Because when finally they have the drugs against schizophrenia, he takes it about 3 months, nothing happened, he doesn't think it's going to work. 4th month, he's in his apartment, and suddenly, for the first time in 35 years, the voice stopped. So first he's really shocked and frightened.
Yes.
Because he feels so different. But to me what was interesting is that the fact that the voices stopped, instead something else was there. First, that he could hear for the first time the traffic in New York. And secondly, for the first time, he could see with compassion his neighbor in the corridor.
Yes.
Which shows me, to me, is an example of awakening in the force that when we awaken, which means when we stop grasping in a way, then not only something goes, but actually something else take its place. And so that's why I kind of chose this book.
Yeah, it's a very, very courageous book. I mean, I would say life story, and I was completely taken by the suffering, as well as you said, you know, there is that germ, that something that really pushes you towards getting better, or something like towards the light. And eventually he does find it, but through the right medication. And I thought it was incredibly sad that it only lived clear of the voices for about 5 years. And all that time he just struggled and struggled and struggled. But yeah, it's a great read, really, even though it's kind of...
Yeah, it's not for the faint-hearted.
It's not for the faint-hearted. It's horrible in places, really. And so... Now, before we conclude, there's a question I'd like to ask you about being bodies, because the undertitle of this is Buddhist Women on the Paradox of Embodiment. So it's both the word paradox and embodiment that I'd like you perhaps to clarify. Number one is, what do you mean by embodiment? You specifically.
Oh, for me, I would put, again, being very ordinary, being in our bodies. And I think, in a way, we are so much in abstraction. We are so much in our head, in theories, ideas, the past, the futures. And of course, we have a brain, and we need to use it. It's very important. But I think, in a way, what I like about this book is that it was kind of, instead of being kind of, you know, mystical, metaphysical, somewhere else, it's really about being here. And being here is being in this body. Right. And when the body works, we can forget about it often. But then when it breaks down,
yes,
what do we do? And so to me, that's why, in a way, the paradox of embodiment is often because in spiritual circle, the idea is that the mind is better and the body, well, you know, we have to deal with it. But when here, I think, in a way, to me, the meditation for this modern world is actually to be in the body, in the mind, in the world. And I think that's what this is about. How meditation is not about going somewhere else, but trying to be the most we can be in this body, in this mind, in this world, at this moment.
Yes. In fact, actually, you just reminded me of something about the joyful life in the heart of pain, where she says that she can actually forget about, I'm using my own words, the pain by being with it. So rather than running away from it, but really feeling it to the best of her ability, you know, what's there, right there in that particular moment to moment to moment. So is that what you would call embodiment?
You see, I would call this differently. She's doing this in this exercise of going inside the pain, inside the sensation.
Yes.
I would say she's doing what we call vipassana, or what we call looking deeply, or what I would call also experiential inquiry.
Yes.
And so it's a kind of a technique of meditation where, in a way, you try to go inside the experience instead of thinking about the experience.
Yes.
And so embodiment, you could say, is not having an idea, my body is like this or like that, but it's kind of more exploring the sensations we experience in our body. And it can be physical sensation, it can be also emotional sensation,
yes.
which then can be also interesting, because we have emotion, and very quickly we go in the story of it.
Yes.
And the meditation can help us to, how does it feel in my body?
Yes.
The feeling I am having. Before I even call it sadness, anger, whatever, how does it feel? So I think, in a way, the embodiment in terms of going inside the sensation I experience, not what I'm told to experience, but what is it I feel? A lot of the time, you don't feel much because not much is happening.
Yes, not much is happening.
And then sometimes lots is happening. What do you do then?
Well, either you are with it or you're not with it, or you're trying to distract yourself by something or another, or being busy and all of that. So anyway.
No, because you see, I think we have to be careful that also we don't think that if we have some pain, I must be with it, because that's another thing. with the mindfulness. You know, I
Yes.
must be mindful, even more mindful. But sometimes if the pain is too much, actually you need to be away from it, as she described.
As you go and eat the ice cream and sit in front of a television and, you know, just do that, you know, for a minute. So
Exactly.
yeah.
So again, to see that there is different way to be with it.
Yeah.
And I think it's according to the energy we have.
Yes.
If you're tired, I think the TV is more like it. If you are more kind of, you have a strength, then you might be more likely to be able to go into it.
Well, thank you very much, Martine, for coming along and for the selection of books that you have recommended. It's been quite illuminating. And thank you also for watching Conscious TV, and we hope we'll see you soon. Thank you. Goodbye.